In the shadow of the mountains, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a gentle breeze swept through the olive trees, carrying whispers of hope and resilience. Jesus gathered his disciples under the twilight sky, their hearts heavy with uncertainty, and shared a story that would forever change their understanding of mental toughness. The disciples sat on the grassy hillside, the cool evening air settling around them like a comforting blanket. They had been traveling for many days, spreading the good news, but exhaustion and doubt had taken hold of their hearts. The weight of their journey pressed down upon them, and for the first time, they found themselves questioning if they were truly strong enough to carry on. The thought of returning to their old lives tugged at the edges of their minds, lives where the burdens were simpler even if the purpose was less clear. Peter, the most outspoken of the disciples, ran a hand through his hair, his face clouded with worry. "Lord, why does this path feel so hard?" he asked, his voice trembling with the uncertainty he had tried to hide. "We have given everything, our homes, our families, our comfort, to follow you. Yet the world resists us and the people mock us. We are tired, afraid, and sometimes I wonder if we can endure." James, who usually maintained a steady composure, nodded in agreement, his voice quieter but no less troubled. "I fear for the future, Master. What if we fail? What if all we've done is in vain?" John, the disciple known for his gentleness, looked down at the ground, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. He thought of his family, the parents he had left behind, and the life he might never return to. "I miss home, Lord. I miss the simplicity of our old lives. The sea, the nets, the peace of a life where we knew what to expect each day. Now all I see ahead are challenges and unknowns." Jesus, sensing their weariness, looked at each of them with a compassionate gaze. He saw past their brave faces and into the fears that clouded their spirits. He understood the silent doubts, the questions they dared not voice. He knew they needed more than comfort. They needed a reminder of the strength that lay within them, a strength they could not yet see. And so he began to speak, weaving a tale that he hoped would plant a seed of courage in each of their hearts. "Let me tell you a story," Jesus said, his voice steady and filled with warmth, drawing his disciples closer with each word. "There was once a farmer who lived in a small village, a man known not for his wealth or power, but for the strength of his spirit. Every season he faced challenges, storms that washed away his crops, droughts that cracked the earth, and pests that devoured his harvest. Yet he never wavered. When the storms came, he would stand in the rain, and when the sun scorched the fields, he would lift his eyes to the sky, trusting that better days would come." The disciples leaned in closer, captivated by the story and the gentle, comforting cadence of Jesus' voice. They could almost see the farmer standing tall against the elements, his weathered hands gripping the plow, a figure of unwavering determination. Their thoughts drifted to the many people they had met along their journey. Mothers weeping over sick children, fathers struggling to find work, the sick who clung to hope despite their suffering. They thought of their own fears and doubts, and they felt a deep connection to the farmer in the story. "But one year," Jesus continued, his tone deepening with the gravity of the tale, "a great flood came, sweeping away the farmer's home and fields. Everything he had worked for was gone. He watched as the river, swollen and angry, swallowed his crops and his home, leaving only ruins in its wake. The villagers came to him, expecting to see despair in his eyes. They thought he would collapse in tears, that he would curse the sky and the waters that had taken everything from him. Yet they found him rebuilding with his hands covered in mud and sweat, but his heart unbroken. They asked him, 'Why do you continue when everything is lost? Why do you plant seeds in ground that has been soaked with your tears?' And the farmer smiled gently and said, 'Because my hope is not planted in the soil, it is rooted in my spirit. The flood may wash away my crops, but it cannot drown my faith. I have lost much, but I have not lost my will to begin again.'" Jesus paused, letting the story settle in the cool evening air. The disciples could almost hear the echo of the farmer's voice, his resolve flowing like a river through the silence. A tear slipped down the cheek of one of the disciples, moved by the simple yet profound resilience of the farmer. He saw in the story a reflection of their own journey, the challenges they faced and the doubts that sometimes filled their hearts. Another disciple, a young man who had always been quick to worry, remembered his fears of the persecution that awaited them in distant towns. He thought of the faces of his family, the ones he might never see again, and he asked, his voice breaking, "But Rabbi, what if the storms keep coming? What if we lose everything over and over again?" Jesus turned to him with a soft, understanding gaze and continued the story. The farmer knew that the rains might come again. He knew that the sun might beat down and that the winds might rise. Yet each morning he rose with the dawn, his hands ready to plant new seeds. He did not ignore the pain, he felt it deeply. There were nights when he wept beneath the stars, his body shaking with the weight of his losses. But even in those darkest nights, he whispered to the heavens, "My strength comes not from what I have lost, but from the love that endures within me. I will rise again as surely as the sun rises over the hills." As Jesus spoke, the disciples could see the farmer, alone in his field, kneeling in the mud with tears on his face, but with a light still burning in his eyes. The image filled them with a bittersweet ache, a mixture of sorrow for his suffering and awe for his unyielding spirit. In that moment they saw themselves in the farmer's struggle. They saw the times they had stumbled, the nights they had doubted, and the moments when they had nearly given up. But more than that, they saw the hope that lived beyond those moments, the hope that Jesus had always kindled in their hearts. As the night deepened, each disciple reflected on the story, feeling the layers of its meaning unfold in their hearts. Peter, who often felt the weight of responsibility as the leader among them, remembered the times he had failed, when his temper had gotten the best of him or when fear had made him falter. He thought back to the night he had nearly drowned on the sea, reaching out for Jesus' hand when the waves overwhelmed him. In the story of the farmer, he saw a new truth, that his strength did not lie in being unbreakable, but in his willingness to reach out and start again, no matter how many times he fell. He looked to Jesus with a renewed sense of determination, knowing that he could face any trial if he kept his hope anchored in his spirit. John, the disciple who often wrestled with a heart that felt too much, thought of the many people they had encountered. Those who came to Jesus seeking healing, those whose burdens seemed too heavy to bear. He remembered the grief in their eyes, the desperation in their voices, and the moments when he had felt helpless to ease their suffering. Yet in the story of the farmer, he found a deeper understanding of compassion, not as a burden to carry, but as a strength that could lift others. He realized that even in moments of sorrow, he could plant seeds of hope in the hearts of those who felt lost. James, who had feared failure, thought of the risks they took each day, walking into towns where they were not welcome, speaking to crowds that sometimes turned hostile. He remembered the anxiety that clung to him before each journey, the way it gnawed at him in the quiet hours of the night. But the story of the farmer, who faced flood after flood with unyielding resolve, taught him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. He felt a new sense of peace settle in his heart, as if the weight of his worries had been lifted even just a little. Matthew, who had been a tax collector before following Jesus, thought of his own troubled past, how he had once been despised by his people, and how he had struggled to forgive himself for the harm he had caused. He had often wondered if he truly deserved a place among the disciples, if he could ever fully redeem himself. But as he listened to Jesus' story, he saw a vision of the farmer, covered in the mud of his ruined fields, planting seeds with hands that were dirty but determined. He realized that redemption was not about erasing the past, but about planting new seeds each day with hope for a better harvest. Tears filled his eyes as he felt a sense of acceptance wash over him, a sense of belonging he had longed for all his life. Then Jesus spoke with a voice that held the depth of love and wisdom. "My friends, life will bring you storms. It will test your spirit, and at times, you will feel like that farmer, struggling against forces that seem too great to overcome. But remember, true strength does not come from a life without challenges. It comes from facing those challenges with a heart that refuses to give in, a heart that finds hope even when hope seems lost. He gazed at each of his disciples, seeing the shift in their hearts, the new light that flickered in their eyes. When you feel weak, remember the farmer. Remember that no storm lasts forever, and that within you is a spirit that can withstand even the greatest trials. For I am with you always, and my love will never leave you, even in the darkest of nights. The disciples, filled with a renewed sense of purpose, looked out at the night sky, the stars shining brighter than before. They knew that their journey would still be difficult, that there would be days when they would question their path and nights when their faith would falter. But the words of Jesus had given them a gift of resilience, a gift of hope. As they rose to continue their journey, the disciples felt the warmth of the sunrise touching their faces, the promise of a new day. And in that light, they carried with them the story of a farmer, the promise of resilience, and the unending love of their teacher, who had shown them that even the smallest seeds of hope could grow into the mightiest trees, if only they had the courage to keep planting. Years later, after Jesus had ascended to heaven, each disciple found themselves returning to the story of the farmer in their own moments of trial. Peter, as he stood before a hostile crowd in Rome, preaching the message of hope despite the threats to his life, remembered the farmer's unbreakable resolve. When he faced imprisonment, when the shadows of fear closed in, he whispered the farmer's words to himself. "My hope is not planted in the soil, it is rooted in my spirit." It was this story that gave him the courage to keep speaking, to keep believing, even when it seemed that all was lost. John, as he sat exiled on the island of Patmos, surrounded by loneliness and longing, remembered the image of the farmer planting seeds in the mud. He thought of the nights he spent under the stars, weeping over the separation from his brothers, and the isolation that clawed at his heart. Yet he found solace in the story that Jesus had shared. He began to write down the visions he received, believing that the words he wrote were seeds that would one day bear fruit in the hearts of believers. He understood that even in exile, his spirit could reach across the sea, carried by the words that held hope. James, who faced martyrdom with unwavering faith, held on to the image of the farmer through his final moments. As he faced the sword, he remembered the story that had once brought him peace on that hillside, and he whispered a prayer, trusting that the seeds he had planted in life would bloom in the hearts of those he had touched. His final thought was of the farmer planting seeds in the rain, believing in the harvest even in the face of the storm. And so, the story of the farmer lived on, not just in the memories of the disciples but in the hearts of those they had taught. It became a story that was shared in secret gatherings of believers, whispered among those who feared persecution, and recited as a prayer for strength in the face of trials. The story grew like a seed, spreading its roots deep into the soil of the early Christian church, carrying with it the wisdom and the love that Jesus had shared on that twilight hillside. This is end of the story. Comment Amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.